I'm joined today by the voice of World Darts, Dan Dawson. Dan, how are you?
I'm very good. The voice of World Darts. So said with a heavy trace of irony, I hope, Burton DeWitt. But yeah, thank you very much for having me back on.
Yeah, nothing but irony in anything I ever say. Well, let's start with the events we've just seen over the past weekend and beginning of this week with the Super Series in Germany. Titles for Jose de Sousa and Michael Smith. First Pro Tour title for Dimitri Van den Bergh. First title of any sort for Dirk van Dijvenbode. Plus career best runs for Martijn Kleermaker and Aaron Beeney. Resurgence from Alan Tabern and some all-time great that you may or may not know of. Who caught your eye the most, though?
Oh, loads. I mean, there were opportunities there that week, weren't there? I mean, I know that they went quite a long way down the alternate or reserve list so that they could get a full field. And I think incredible work that they managed to have 128 players for the whole 4-day period. I think it's absolutely incredible that they managed to do it, that they've moved the mountains that they did to put on full tournaments. But it still led to opportunities for players. Jose and Michael Smith are absolutely brilliant. Dimitri Van den Bergh has finally solved the riddle of Pro Tour events and winning on the floor. And now he's done that, then he could do anything, in my opinion. And I think Dirk van Dijvenbode's title is very, very well deserved. I wasn't surprised by those 4 winners at all, but I think it is big news that both Dirk and Dimitri won those titles, their first ones on the floor. But as you mentioned, there's loads of other stories. Martijn Kleermaker making his first final. Luke Humphries has made 3 finals in about 7 weeks. I mean, that is an incredible sort of step forward in his career. But yeah, it was great to see Robert Thornton turn up out of the blue. He played pretty ropey stuff in the Modus League stuff a week or so before, but was absolutely fantastic on one of the days and going on a deep route. So standard thing, if you chuck these guys on the tour into a room and make them play in these Pro Tour events, you're going to get stories, you're going to get some excellent darts. And once again, even with a slightly depleted field, they managed to produce the goods.
Yeah, you mentioned the slightly depleted field. We had 26 tour card holders didn't make the trip to Germany, and neither did you, Dan. What was it like commentating on the matches from home? Any flashbacks of the home tour?
I mean, there was a bit. I was in the same basement in Birmingham. Look, I won't lie, it's not as good. You don't get the buzz of being at an actual event, and it's an awful lot trickier just to do it. It's very clever, the kit they were using to be able to do it. So you got Mark Webster in his spare room, his darts room up in North Wales. Paul Nicholson was in his spare room in Sussex, and then me in Birmingham. Now, it's very clever that we can commentate and we can do co-commentary together, but just with the way they're doing it, you've got a webcam thing so you can see your co-commentator, so you know when they're speaking, or at least get a better feel for it. But it covers up half the scoreboard, so it's quite difficult to know what's going on in the game. You've got a selection. There was one time Paul Nicholson had a power cut in the middle of it one day, and so he just disappeared for an hour because his internet just wasn't there. So look, you're bound to get these kind of things, but I'll be honest, I was quite impressed with how they managed to solve that problem, because if it wasn't for that, I'd have had to go to Germany. It was a nightmare getting back and forth. I might still be travelling. I'd certainly still be quarantining, and I wouldn't have been able to go and see Kevin Painter today and record the dart show. So look, I mean, it's been very, very clever how they've managed to make it all work, and it certainly allowed me to get some more work done and earn some. So that's all right by me.
Well, you still would have been able to record this even if you were in quarantine.
That's true, yeah.
So, in the end, is it really any different?
Priorities, Burton, to be honest, yeah. I mean, that was as long as I could do this, then forget everything else. Everything else is a bonus. That's what I told the PDC, and, it's just a happy accident. I've managed to do other things as well.
We're putting that as our new slogan. Now, we're a year into darts under the restrictions of the pandemic. You weren't in Germany, but you've been to a lot of the events. What's it been like covering events with no fans in the venues and other restrictions and having to follow all of the guidelines to get these events going?
I mean, it is a bit of a fact. I think we're all used to it now, to be honest. I mean, the way they were able to... Q School was the one. I was astonished that they were able to put Q School on with the just sheer number of people that had to go through the whole process of testing and everything else. I know that, people were raising eyebrows about the Pro Tour in Germany. I think they probably would have held it in the UK if they hadn't, if they'd known everything they'd have had to do. But because everything keeps changing day by day, week by week, they announce something, and then suddenly the rules have changed, and what they have to do has changed, and players have to quarantine when they weren't supposed to. You can't get exemptions, all this sort of stuff. So it is very. I'm just glad that I'm not the one doing any of the organising. I'm completely used to having COVID tests now. God knows how many of those I've done. I've got very, very good at quarantining myself in hotel rooms in Milton Keynes, and I'll be honest, I've absolutely hammered Football Manager. There's been an awful lot of that played when I've been quarantining for 24 hours at a time with very little else to do. But other than that, I mean, everybody wants the fans back. It's going to be strange when they are back, but at the same time, like, you know what? There's going to be an interim stage, I think, where we're not going to have full houses back. We're going to have, like, say, the World Championship, where we had like 500 and whatever. It's not that good. Just have it, there's a critical mass of fans that make the darts good. And you see it on the Euro Tour. If you get 1,000 people into the right size venue, you can have a really, really good atmosphere. But if it's less than that, if it's only 600, if it's only 500 or less than that, we saw it at the European Championship last year when he had a very, very small crowd, and you can hear individual voices calling out. It's not really got any atmosphere. It's just sort of a gaggle of people, and it's not even a sort of hubbub of noise, like a wall of noise. You can just sort of hear individual conversations and little pockets of noise, and it's just not the same. I'm hoping that everything bounces back to normality quite quickly, and that sort of trademark PDC darts atmosphere returns quickly, because if we're going to go through months of sort of that semi 500 fans in, I think people will realise that it's just not that enticing an atmosphere. People want to go, obviously. They just want to go and consume live sport. They want to do it, but it's better than nothing. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing a full house. And who knows? We could have it by Blackpool, but I just don't know at the minute.
Well, despite the lack of a crowd, I personally felt that darts has been one of the better sports to watch on TV during these months. But the players, they've stepped up, and we've seen a lot of new winners. What have been your highlights during these last 12 months?
I think the rise of players like Dimitri has been astonishing. I was talking about this the other day. I think Gerwen Price, we're not seeing much of him at the minute, are we? I mean, he's not playing in the Premier League through no fault of his own. He's not been playing in much of the Pro Tour events, but all of his main rivals, they're kind of like, Gerwen Price's stock is rising just in his absence, really. Michael van Gerwen is suffering another crisis. Peter Wright and Gary Anderson, they don't look the consistent level that they were, and new stars are arriving. Dimitri Vandenberg is arguably playing the best darts in the world right now. Johnny Clayton has made a massive step forward in his career. Could we see people like Dirk van Dijvenbode take that next step? I mean, arguably, you could say he already has. I mean, he's regularly in the quarterfinals or better in big TV tournaments pretty much non-stop for the last year or so. I think we are seeing a changing of the guard, and I think you can make a very strong case right now. The old order, the likes of Wright, Van Gerwen, who have been the best players on the planet for a number of years, you could make a case that they're no longer the best players on the planet right now, and it's interesting. It's exciting. I think whenever we spoke last, we were probably having that debate about, we don't know who the best player in the world is, but it's probably between three: Price, Van Gerwen and Wright. Now, I think it's even more wide open than that, and you're seeing that play out in the Premier League.
Yeah, definitely now. And who knows, in a couple of years, it might be someone who was just at Q School earlier this year. Of course, we might have lost one of the all-time greats from the tour in Robert Thornton, but another all-time great, Andrew Gilding, won back his tour card. How pleased are you to have Goldfinger back on the tour? And who else of the new tour card holders do you think could go far over the next 2 years?
Well, it's always a delight seeing Goldfinger back. I haven't seen that much of him on the old streaming boards, but yeah, it just goes to show you there are routes back. If you drop off the tour, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the end for you. You can come back. I mean, look, we've seen that dramatically from players like Nathan Aspinall, but who's to say that somebody like Robert Thornton couldn't get back on him? Played fabulous darts the other day. He still got the magic. It's just about doing it consistently. I mean, I think, to be honest, you guys were probably ahead of the curve in highlighting one of the the guys to come through Q School this year, who is the one to watch, or certainly one of the ones to watch, and that's Alan Suter. I mean, the man has taken to PDC darts like a duck to water, and it's one of those players who, people knew he had talent, he demonstrated it, but just life got in the way. Circumstances did not allow him to chase his dream of being a PDC pro. Well, it looks like things have changed and the opportunity has arisen. He has seized it with both hands. He has been so impressive when we've seen him in action so far this year. And who knows where he could be come the end of his first 2 years on the tour. He's not won a title yet, but I think from what I've seen, he's certainly got the game where he could do. And having already beaten Raymond van Barneveld on a big stage at the UK Open, then I think he doesn't look overawed by taking on any of these big names.
Yeah, who knows? We could see him in the Premier League one day. We could see him being introduced onto the stage by you in the Premier League. We've seen you do some of the MC work for the PDC last year in the Premier League. We've heard the "it's time for the darts" catchphrase. Great to see the catchphrases make a return in the darts MC world. What made you bring it in?
Look, I mean, to be honest, I was the MC of last resort. It's only ever been when John McDonald hasn't been available for whatever reason, and I've happened to be in the building. So look, I'm not entertaining any grand ideas of doing this on a regular basis, but look, all I was concerned about was A, don't mess up your words, and B, don't sound like you're trying to do a crap John McDonald impression. So just don't go out there and say word for word what he does, because if I do that, it won't be as good anyway, but it will just be me doing a rubbish impression. So just try and say something. And it is time for the darts. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It's Ronseal, isn't it? Now it is time for the darts. So there we go. I couldn't say now it's time to meet the players. So I just had to think of something else, and that's the best I could come up with.
Now, we're 9 nights into the Premier League. 2 players that you've been a big fan of watching, Jose de Sousa and Johnny Clayton, have both been very impressive so far in debut, as of course is the newest Pro Tour winner, Dimitri Vandenberg. What have you made of it all so far?
I think it's been fascinating. It's been absolutely fascinating. I mean, look, it's not been nice watching Glenn Durrant struggle, and it really is. It has been a struggle for him. Look, I've been there in Milton Keynes from start to finish, and it's hard to watch. This is the guy that only a few months ago was reigning supreme. He was beating everybody. There's only 3 players who've topped the league phase in his tournament's history, and he's one of them. And the other 2 are arguably the 2 greatest players ever. But he's in a real problem. The fact that he's lost every single game, I mean, it kind of just concertinaed everybody else up in the table. And so Rob Cross has got eliminated with a record points tally. But you can kind of throw your hat over everybody else in the league. And going into this sort of second phase of it, it's not just mathematically possible, but you could find any order of those players that they're going to finish in. We know that Anderson and Wright and MVG and Wade, they've got quality, and they could put a run together that sees them finish top, and it could be those 4 that are in the playoffs. I, however, think that the debutants and last year's runner-up who made the final on debut, Nathan Aspinall, I think they've acquitted themselves absolutely phenomenally, and I don't see a reason why 2, 3, maybe even all 4 of them could finish in the playoffs and consign those huge names, Wright, Anderson, Wade and MVG, to not even make the semi-finals and final. I mean, I think it would be absolutely mind-blowing, the earth-shattering development in the world of darts were that to happen. They're the 4 biggest names in the sport. But I think times are changing. They constantly are changing. Of course they are. But I think that times are really changing. And players like Michael van Gerwen are nowhere near the dominant forces that they have been in recent years.
Yeah, you mentioned it there. It's a good split we've got for this second phase of the Premier League. You've got the old guard with Van Gerwen, Wade, Anderson, Wright, and then this new guard coming through, Dimitri, Jose, Johnny, Nathan in there. Do you see the playoff race being as close or maybe even closer than last year? Last year it went down to the final game.
I can certainly see that happening, yeah. I mean, I think it's too close now for there not to be things up for grabs come, the last night or 2 of the regular league season. Can I see a couple of players pulling away at the top? Yeah, I could. I think Dimitri Vandenberg is playing absolutely magnificent darts at the minute. It has been for quite some time. I think he's playing better than when he was playing at the match play and he won it. We saw him be brilliant at the Grand Slam of darts. We saw him be brilliant at the World Championship, and he's been brilliant at the Premier League as well. I think that he really does have the capability to be out there at the top of the table on his own. But Jose de Sousa, an absolute monster. He could win every single game. He is the biggest scorer in the world of darts, and he hits double top really well. Now, there's a certain all-time great, Robert Thornton, who did that. It took him to 3 major titles, beating the best players in the world in his code over the course of those title runs. Jose de Sousa could do something similar. He is an absolute monster. The likes of Dozer and Dimitri both say he's the best player I've ever seen in practice, and you haven't seen what he can do on the main stage yet, despite the fact, last week he was chucking in 114 averages, 117 averages, more 9-darters. The man is an absolute freak. Nathan Aspinall's back in form, playing brilliantly. Johnny Clayton is just, he's found another level to his game. They're all hugely convincing, and it's really exciting watching them play. I mean, they can't, they're going to drop points, they're going to lose games because they're all playing each other. That's how this is going to work, but that's what the Premier League's about. It's about pitting the very best against each other, and it's going to be an absolute bloodbath.
You mentioned earlier that it's been a bit of a changing of the guards. Last time we had you on, it was who of Michael van Gerwen, Gerwen Price, and Peter Wright is the best in the world now. You said plenty of other players in there, but let's talk about the former world number one. Lots of talk. Didn't really pull up any trees at the Super Series this past week. Hasn't won a title yet as we enter May. Longest he's gone since becoming a major winner in the PDC. What do you think's gone wrong for him?
Well, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? I mean, they're all. I'm sure that you've got some fabulous stats, Burton, that you can use to back it up. But I'm just looking at the Premier League stuff, and I think 3 of his worst 5 Premier League averages ever have all come in this tournament. Now, last year's tournament, he finished 6th, and that was a crisis. And some of the stuff he was playing afterwards, like on the Euro, I remember a game with Andy Hamilton in the Euro Tour that weekend. I think it was in Riesa. He was all over the place. It's not the darts. It's never the darts. It's so rarely the darts. It's about confidence and how he's throwing. His B game is non-existent now. When he's bad, he's really, really average. We're talking 90 averages, and we're just not used to seeing that from Michael van Gerwen. Of course, he can still go up there and average 105, 107 and look amazing. Of course, but he's not doing it as often. And that's the difference between Michael van Gerwen dominating the world of darts, as he has done for the best part of a decade, and Michael van Gerwen now not looking like the world's best player, just looking like a very, very good player, looking like a sort of top 10, top 16 player. And it's a weird thing to see. But when the confidence, when he says that when I play properly, I'm still the best in the world. Well, 2 years ago, he was able to say, I'm the best in the world, even when I don't play properly. But he can't say that now. He really is struggling. All the other players, they smell blood, and they are beating him. They're not scared of him. They know that he's quite capable of going up there and averaging 91 against them, which is pretty much unheard of for MVG in the sort of years of his dominance. I don't know what's wrong. I don't know how to fix it. More importantly, he doesn't seem to know how to fix it. There's been plenty of people cheerleading, going, "Oh, he's back. He's sorted. It's all fixed." I thought he was getting back to normal back end of last year, but he seems to have gone straight back to where he was last summer when his Premier League campaign ended in a 6th place finish. It could be worse this year. It could be lower than that. It's not, I don't take any glee or joy in seeing MVG struggle like this, but they're the facts, and we can't really get away from it.
Well, looking further ahead, then the World Match Play is getting closer. The PDC announcing 2 more Super Series before the cut-off. As things stand, no 21st consecutive appearance for Steve Beaton. Adrian Lewis set to miss out for the first time since 2004. Can you see either of them turning it round in time to make Blackpool?
I don't know. I saw little bits of Beaton. I'd never rule out Beaton because even when I saw him playing in Germany, we had one of his games on the streaming board. He still looked all right. Still played okay. It looks like Steve Beaton at any point could just have one of those days where he goes and finds himself in a semi-final or final, or maybe even wins it. His throw is not changed. I don't really understand where Adrian is at in his game. I mean, it's not just the match play Adrian's got to worry about. He could miss out on the World Grand Prix and the World Championship. Now, if he missed out on all of those, then Adrian Lewis starts tumbling down the rankings, astronomically, dropping like a stone. So, I mean, Adrian has some serious work to do. We all know his talent, but, your reputation and what you've won in the past doesn't count for anything, I'm afraid. The game marches forward, and we've seen players who've won major titles drop off the tour, and unless Adrian arrests this slump, then he could genuinely, and that's something I never thought I'd be saying, be talking about Adrian, his career being in jeopardy. I don't know. But look, the talent for both is there. And they've got the opportunities. I wasn't sure how many Super Series events we were going to get before the match play. As you've said, 2 have been announced just today. As we're talking. So that's 8 more Pro Tour events. That is a huge number of opportunities. It's opportunities for MVG to play himself back into form. It's opportunities for Adrian Lewis and Steve Beaton or whoever to get themselves into major tournaments. But there's lots of other players who are vying to be at Blackpool for the first time in their careers. I mean, it could be massive for those guys. I mean, Ryan Searle, I think, is in the last qualifying spot. Somebody like Darius Labanauskas hovering around there. It's potentially career-changing stuff for a lot of these guys. So look, it's exciting, but I would imagine it's going to be pretty nerve-wracking for a lot of them.
Now, you mentioned earlier as well, you've been playing a lot of Football Manager over the past year. This might be the most important question you're ever asked, but what's the best ever achievement you've had in Football Manager?
Well, I mean, we're back in the day. I mean, I am a man who had to snap the old DVD or CD for Football Manager because I spent too much time on it back in the day. And it's only really during lockdown where I thought, what, I'll just download it. I've taken the mighty Notts County from non-league into the Premier League, but to be honest, it took the 7 years that it took me to get those successive promotions. It's kind of got a bit ridiculous. There's no real players, or very few real players actually exist in that universe that I've got saved on a hard drive somewhere. So I'm trying to take a step away from it for my own mental and physical health, and perhaps try and focus on things that really do exist. So you're not having this sort of fictitious press conference in the shower talking about the young Brazilian you've signed who doesn't actually exist in anywhere other than this silly computer game that you've been playing. But it has saved me from an awful lot of hours of boredom stuck in a Milton Keynes hotel room.
Good to hear. Well, lastly from me, we should give a mention to your podcast as well, the Good Darts podcast, another Low Six production, 50 episodes up now. Can you pick out your favourite moments doing the show with Wayne Mardell?
You know what? We're just following in your footsteps, lads, in doing a darts podcast, which seemed like a far too much effort to do before now. But it's been good. And you know what? I think it's like I've said to you before. It's down to people like us to try and tell the stories of these players. And you know what? Eddie Hearn, when I spoke to him the other day, obviously he's taken over the PDC, he was saying the same kind of stuff. He's saying if we're going to get fans to give a toss about whatever sport, but obviously we're talking about darts, then you have to tell the stories of these players. In the boxing, it's, there are plenty of, I think there's lots of technical terms like shoulder programming or lots of TV speak I don't really understand. But essentially, it's about telling the stories of the players involved, because people won't care about them unless they know who they are. Now, the PDC have made a conscious effort over the last couple of years to do more and more stuff on social media. They've got a really good team who do a lot more videos and stuff just to try and give you a little glimpse of what the players are like behind the scenes. So it's not just some blokes in dart shirts throwing darts over and over at treble 20 on a stage and wherever they happen to be. It's about giving more of their personalities. And hopefully, the weekly darts cast, the Good Darts podcast, that helps that along the way. I mean, I know I spoke to Aaron Beeney the other day for it. I know you've spoken to him a couple of times. I think he's just spoken to you actually when I grabbed him. But I mean, what a story he's got! What a fascinating character, and really good to see that he's having a bit of success, because it's not been an easy ride for him, but it's just been an overflowing positivity when you hear him talk about his life on the tour and how much he is loving every single second of it, even though it took weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks for him just to win a single game on the Pro Tour. But look, they're the stories that I think do make this sport interesting, because it's always been about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and we need to tell those stories because I think that's what makes it interesting and fun.
Well, Dan, thank you for taking some time to tell your story.
Oh, very nice, Burton. You should do this professionally. You're very good.
Well, thank you so much.
No worries, dude.